Hi, Suzanne Jakes here, Marketing Coordinator for Unique Training and Development with Kirk Langford, our General Manager, for another Leader Feeder episode. Hello, Kirk. How are you today?
I'm good, Suzanne. How are you doing?
Good. Always good. Today we're talking about how to increase employee retention. Now, I feel like this is going to be a big subject for a lot of organizations, right? Because it's sometimes tough keeping skilled employees, right?
It is. It absolutely is, yeah.
So I'm going to start off with an easy, maybe a quick, maybe a long question here.
Never know with me.
Well, right? But why would employees leave a company? And I imagine that this would impact productivity and other things along the board. But what are some main reasons, in your opinion, why an employee would leave an organization?
So there's a couple that right off the bat are pretty obvious. If they feel like they're not being compensated fairly, right? So if their pay, their salary isn't what they want it to be, that seems to be, I'm sure we could all agree that's one of the big ones is pay. I think another one is the environment, right? So, for example, if they're in a toxic work environment or toxic work culture, they might eventually feel like, you know what, I've had enough. So whether it's their boss that they feel like treats them unfairly or maybe has favorites on the team and they're not one of the favorites. It could be just the other coworkers are not treating them nicely or in a way that they want to be treated, and their leader isn't stepping in to help, right? Their manager isn't intervening and saying, okay, this has to stop. So for whatever reason, I mean, a toxic work environment could come about lots of different ways, but we do see that, and I think that's one of the other big reasons people tend to leave. So lack of pay or sufficient pay for what they want, adequate pay, and I think a toxic work culture. I think a lack of sort of motivation and lack of engagement is another big one. So it's not necessarily that toxic work culture. It's not that I'm being, harassed or something. It's not that my coworkers are mean to me or bullying me. It's just I just kind of lost interest. I don't want to be here anymore.
Right.
I don't find this particularly motivating. I don't find it particularly exciting or engaging. I do think that's something we see a bit more in manufacturing than we might see in other industries because it can be repetitive work. It can be a lot of the same thing. And if you're working on an 8 or a 10 or a 12-hour shift doing relatively repetitive motions or tasks, that can really sort of hit on your motivation, right? It can be challenging to stay really motivated putting this part onto this part, for example, or just checking on this product as it comes through the line.
Yep.
So I think that's part of it, or rather those are some parts of it, I would say. Those would probably be the biggest ones that I can think of. So I go back to pay, I go back to a toxic work culture, and then that lack of motivation or engagement. And sometimes that lack of motivation or engagement happens very quickly. It can be the first couple shifts. They just don't go well. The leader doesn't do much to make the employee feel welcome and involved. And so they kind of go, well, why would I want to be here if this isn't very engaging? Other times it can be you've done a job for 5, 6, 7 years or whatever, and you start to go, I'm tired of it. I'm ready to move on to the next challenge.
Same old stuff almost. Yeah.
And then that's where probably the last reason I'll give would come in, which is a lack of mobility. And by mobility, I mean either it could be, and you'll notice I didn't say upwards mobility. It's because we're seeing more of, it doesn't have to be all about promotions. It doesn't all have to be up.
Oh,
it's not always about going up the ladder.
I was wondering what you meant about up.
It might be lateral. It might be I want to work in a different department. I just want to try different tasks. I want to try a different machine. We're seeing a lot more people saying, I don't necessarily want to become a manager. I don't want to become a leader in that sense, but I would like to try new things and be challenged in a different way and be compensated fairly for it. Right. So those are the big ones that I would say are causing employees or would cause employees to leave.
Those are some big things I think that, everybody can maybe relate to, whether they've left a place or not. You brought up a couple specific points in there, which one was favoritism, and whether maybe you as a leader do or do not know that you're playing favorites. Sometimes it's the people on the team perceiving that you're playing favorites.
Very much so.
How could a leader tackle that?
Yeah, that's a good point. The word you brought up that I think is important is the perception of favoritism. We've worked with lots of clients, and one of the things we've seen is you can either be playing favorites because maybe you were promoted from within, so you are now, and you go from being one of the team to the leader of the team, and so it's very natural in that setting to pick favorites. And I don't think you actively pick them as much as you kind of stick to the people that you know the best and that you trust the most, and you pick them for certain tasks.
Rachel's good at that.
That's right.
Bobby's great at this.
Yeah, I already know he likes that job because he told me. when we were coworkers. So now you are playing favorites, right? But the perception of playing favorites could also be this. Check out this scenario. So, Suzanne, you're really reliable. You always do everything I ask. You never complain. You get the work done. I just love working with you. So when there's a new task that needs to be done, and if I sense there's going to be any resistance from the team, if I sense it's difficult, if anything like that, what do? I go, I'm going to ask Suzanne to do it. And that could be me. What I'm maybe trying to do is I'm actually trying to spare the rest of the team from some of the hard work. I'm trying to spare the team from things that they might not like or might not enjoy, because I know you'll get it done and I know you'll say yes. But in fact, my team is going, why does Suzanne get to try all the new stuff? We would take on new challenges if we were asked, or why is she the golden child? So again, there's that perception of favorites. I see it as I'm trying to save my team from, tasks they might not like or a particularly difficult task. But it could very easily be perceived by my team as Kirk prefers Suzanne, and therefore he gives her all the challenges, and the chance for her to be promoted is way higher because she gets to try all these things. So that's where the perception piece is important.
And then Suzanne's sitting there thinking, "Oh my gosh, Kirk just gives me all these jobs
I get
all
all
the time
the
where
extra
I have
work."
to learn all this new stuff." I mean,
That's right.
Well, it could be a negative side effect, but
I think it
also
eventually
could
becomes
be-
that way. It
could-
eventually
could
gets
be,
to be seen as, why is it always me that's getting picked to do all this stuff?
Right.
Why can't anyone else on the team be relied on? So it can actually generate frustration, not only for those on the team that aren't getting picked to do the work, but actually for Suzanne, who's being asked to do all of this extra work all the time. And so in terms of combating that, I do think one of the I suppose easy ways, if you want to look at it that way, is to maybe even have a chart and say each time I have an extra task or something different or new, having essentially a checklist to go, or a list of names and go, who did I ask last time, right? Could I go to, I asked Suzanne last time, could I go to Bill and say, Bill, I've got this extra task, I want to ask you first, if you're interested. No? Okay, if not, I'll go to the next person. Or even just asking people, saying, hey guys, we have this extra job, the line is down and we have to do what we can to get it back up, who can help me? Right? Let people volunteer themselves. Because maybe you will put up your hand, because you're still that go-getter and you might put up your hand right away, but someone else that I didn't expect might also put their hand up. And now I'm going, oh, okay, there are people on the team that I didn't really know were up for taking on a challenge.
Right.
And now, because I asked instead of just deciding who was going to do it without any consultation from the team, I might be opening my eyes as the leader to, oh, my team is more ready to take on other challenges than I expected. So that's a way you can avoid favoritism.
I like the idea of a chart, mainly because I do like spreadsheets and charts myself.
Yeah.
So I do like that
Helps
idea.
keeps it organized.
Yeah, it keeps
Yeah.
it organized, and
That's
visuals are always good
Yeah.
for me too.
Yeah.
Another specific one that you brought up was rotation. Maybe it wasn't quite rotation, but you talked about the lack of as why someone might leave is because
That's
they're
right.
just doing the
Lack
same
of variety.
job, right,
Yeah.
day in and day out. So I've heard you say before, charts can also help with that too, right? And maybe
Absolutely.
you want to explain it to our
Yeah,
listeners
yeah.
about how you can cross-train, I believe
that's
you
right.
say, or
Yeah,
rotation.
cross-training, yeah. So really what that is you would take a very simple chart and list the people on your team in one, down the column, and then of course the tasks that need to be done along the rows rather. And then you're just going to say, okay, who can do what? Well, Terry can do this, and Rosemary can do this, and Brian can do this. Okay, great. Now I have a list of who can do what. Now I need to figure out which tasks I want other people to be able to do. So maybe Rosemary can do X and Y, but she can't do A and B, and I want her to know how to do that, right? So then I know which tasks she can do. I know which ones she can't do, so I now know what I want to train her on. And I can do that for all the members on my team. Because what I know is, as a leader, the more people I have on my team that are trained to do different tasks, the better I'm able to be adaptable in an emergency. And not just me, but rather my team.
Right.
So if something happens, if I go, well, it's okay that Suzanne's on vacation. I got 3 other people that can do that particular task. It doesn't cause, chaos or havoc if someone's not available or something happens where I need to switch and rotate people.
Right, yeah, no, that's great. Another point, I do like the cross-training because I do think that within organizations, just having a variety of work is important as well, right? Like,
That's right.
then you don't have to go in and do the same thing day in and day
Yes.
out. You get to the opportunity to learn new things, which is always a lot of fun. You'd also brought up onboarding. Sorry, in my head, you didn't say those specific words, but in my head, it came in as onboarding. It's like, did you welcome new members?
That's right.
So when we talk about retention and how to increase employee retention within your workspace, onboarding came to mind when you'd said, a welcoming environment. What else can can leaders or organizations do to make sure that they have a good onboarding process for these new employees to make sure that they'd want to stay?
Good question. The first thing, honestly, have a process. Actually set up a checklist. You know, I have one myself, so that when we hire someone, I make sure that I hit on certain things and that everybody's getting the same, not the same treatment per se, but that I'm not forgetting certain things for some employees, because it can be a frustrating thing if you're new to go to do something for the first time and ask the boss, hey, I'm wondering about this, or I've been asked to do this and I'm not really sure. Oh yeah, sorry, I was supposed to train you on that and I forgot. That's a really frustrating experience, right? If you have that checklist in place for either different roles, or maybe there's certain things that apply to anybody on your team. There probably are, right? Usually there would be. Making sure everybody gets consistent onboarding experience, right? And so I think the first thing is just have a list. Write down all of those things you think about. What do I need to do each time someone comes on? And it's not just the task. It's not just give them a key and give them a security code and give them the email login. It might be other things like introduce them in the company newsletter. It might be give them a walk around of the floor and introduce them to the different departments.
Personally,
right? Things that are not just about getting them set up so they can do the work, but actually things that make them feel welcome.
Right, greet them at the
That's
door.
Right. Yeah, greet them at the door on the first day. Make sure that the whole team, maybe invite them to eat lunch with the team on the first day if that's possible, right?
Absolutely.
Things that make them go, oh, I already feel, maybe not part of the team right away, but I feel like this team actually wants me to be here. I forget exactly what the numbers are, but there has been research done that sort of says that people have already decided within their first couple of shifts whether this is a job they would want to stay at for years and years, or whether it's going to be a short-term thing. And so that's pretty powerful to think about that within the first couple of shifts, you are making or breaking whether that person's going to stay. And in one way, you could look at that as stressful, because as a leader going, oh God, these first couple of shifts really matter, I can't mess this up. But I actually think what it means is that let's front load the positivity to that beginning of the experience. Let's make sure they're introduced to the team. Let's make sure we learn their name and we use it often and teach the rest of the team their name. Let's make sure that we make those couple, especially the first couple, but as much as we can, a positive experience so that they're saying, I like this place. This is a cool place. Puts sort of a good taste in their mouth. And
maybe I'll stay a while.
Yeah. It kind of goes back to that thing of like first impressions are really important, right? And so the same thing applies. And so when we talk about retention, we absolutely need to talk about making a good first impression. And I honestly think it just starts with a list.
Right.
And like I said, the other thing about that list is that it shouldn't just include the tasks that get them the login and get them the this, take care of it, get them the payroll information. Yes, of course, you got to do all that. But you also have to think about what can I make them do to actually feel welcome.
Right.
Right.
Oh, great points.
Yeah,
I love all of those. That's really great. Something that popped into my mind while you were chatting there and listing off those amazing things that anybody, I believe, can take away from that, is recognition programs. We kind of, well, I shouldn't say we kind of, because I have heard positives and negatives to kind of recognition programs. So say someone has stayed on with you for a while and you now, what is your take, I guess, is what I want to ask on recognition programs? Because, yes, I have heard they're good. I've heard they're bad. Yeah. I've heard people like them. I've heard some people don't like them. Yeah. Do you have an opinion?
I have an opinion on everything, so don't worry about that. No, I think they can be good when they're used effectively, right?
Okay.
So what I mean by that is having, a bit of a recognition for somebody being there for 10 years or 5 years or 20 years. I think that's great because you want to show that we care that you've stuck around. We appreciate that you've stuck around as long as you have. I think that's fantastic. I don't think that should take the place of other appreciation and acknowledgement. So acknowledgement for a job well done, making sure that positive reinforcement and positive feedback is provided. So it's not sort of, well, Ben, I didn't really say much to you this month because you got that 20-year award last year. I mean, you've been here 20 years. What more? What you still want positive feedback? Come on, dude. No, you still have to get that. So I guess it's as long as the recognition isn't taking place of other positive acknowledgement and positive feedback, I think it can be really successful. And I think it shows that as a company, if it's something you're celebrating and measuring and talking about, it's clearly something you care about, right? So if you are highlighting that, then I think it's because it's important to you as a company or as an organization. So yeah, I think it can be really positive. It's just got to be used in the right way, like anything.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
So we've talked about a lot of things, actually, like good onboarding, competitive wages, positive work environment, which is huge, recognition programs, and even you touched base a little bit on work-life balance, which is important no matter where you are. Another thing that kind of came to mind, maybe the final thing that we'll talk about today, are transparent management practices. So that's something that can influence, I suppose, employee retention. But being transparent, as in like open and all these things, does, I think, kind of just compiles all of those, does it not? Like when you
I
say
think to a large
transparent,
extent,
management practices, would kind of, encompass a lot of the things that we talked about today already. But was there anything else that maybe little tidbit of information or last quick things that are popping into your head that could help organizations increase employee retention?
Yeah. I think when we go back to talking about transparency and transparent management, I think as leaders, it's very easy to think that we're leaders because we have a certain control or power or authority that other people don't have. But I would argue if you think you have that, if you need that power, that control to be the boss, then you're a boss, not a leader. I think a leader is a leader because people follow them even though they may not be the official boss, right? A lot of you are listening to this and you're thinking of who's that person in the organization where they may not be your direct manager, but you go to them. You go to them with questions, concerns, and even though they're not your manager, they just have an answer. And they have a way of helping you get through the problem or think about it in an open way that doesn't sort of show I'm more knowledgeable than you, but they just have a way of being collaborative that way. That to me is a leader, right? Just because someone is your boss on paper, it doesn't naturally make them a leader. And so I think when we talk about transparent management, I think what we're talking about is a leader that feels the need to withhold information, for example, in order to be in control. They're not being a real leader, because I can tell you stuff and say, hey, I'll tell you as much as I know about a certain situation or a plan that we plan on going ahead with, and I'm going to ask your feedback, and I shouldn't have to be afraid, right? That doesn't make me feel threatened by providing information that is sort of like, well, I'm the manager, only I should know that. Well, why? Why not share what I can with my team so that we can work together? I can involve you folks, the team members, in making decisions and kind of next steps for the team and the future of the team. So I think if we think about it that way, then transparent management is just all about involving the team by telling them what we know and what we can when we know it, as opposed to saying, well, if I withhold this information, it gives me control or it gives me power. We don't need to do that if we're a true leader.
Right. Oh, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah. Thanks so much, Kurt.
Yeah, of course.
It was a great chat today, as usual, here on Leader Feeder. And thank you very much to all of our listeners tuning in. I hope you learned something exciting and impactful today that you can take into your organizations. Till next time, we'll see you on the next Leader Feeder.